75 passengers lost their lives after this pilot let his children in the cockpit. On March 23rd, 1994, an Aeroflot aircraft was flying from Russia to Hong Kong when the airplane tragically crashed. Only a few hours into the flight, one of the pilots allowed his two children who were also on the flight to enter the cockpit so that they can see how everything operated. The pilot's 16-year-old son Elder and his 12-year-old daughter Yana had the opportunity to sit in the pilot's seat and play around with the aircraft's controls. Of course, autopilot was on, so this was not supposed to be dangerous. Well, at least that's what he thought. The pilot told his son Elder that he can turn the plane to one side so he can experience what it was to fly a plane. Unfortunately, this disabled autopilot. The pilots were unaware that the plane began turning, but once they noticed, the plane had steepened to almost 90 degrees. The plane started to quickly descend while the pilots tried to figure out what was wrong. And there's actually an audio recording of how everything played out, and you can hear the fear in these pilots' voices. The plane ended up crashing on a mountain in Russia, killing all 75 passengers on board. After investigating, they said that the cause of the crash were the children who were playing with the controls in the aircraft. And it was said that if the pilots had left the controls alone rather than trying to fix them manually, the plane would have corrected itself.
Pranks that definitely went too far. Firstly, this kid was walking into an elevator when the floor opened up. He genuinely thought he was falling to his death until he fell onto a slide that covered him in foam and feathers, which destroyed all of his belongings, including his laptop. Next, these people were applying for a job at LG Electronics when the window behind the interviewer showed a meteor crashing down, seemingly destroying the entire city. They were screaming and crying until the company had to run in and tell them it was just a screen. Finally, this prank is the worst one of all. These customers were paying for store items when a Grim Reaper appeared on the screen. When they turned around and saw a man with a scythe winking, they each began to tear up in regret, believing that these were their final moments.
This woman murdered a teenager because it was on her bucket list. It was 2016 and Gemma Lilly was 26 years old. She was obsessed with serial killers and she'd emigrated to Australia 6 years earlier back in 2010. She was originally from Lincolnshire and had a troubled upbringing. Her fascination with crime and horror was a dark one, and disturbingly, she even put murdering someone on her bucket list. Her housemate was 44-year-old Trudy Lennon. She was actually introduced by a mutual friend to Trudy. Trudy had been struggling financially and actually had 2 children to feed, so the pair decided to live together in order to share bills. At this point, the women started sharing disturbing fantasies about killing someone. Some of these were even documented in the online chats that the pair had. They used the code names SOS and Corvina. Within the space of just 3 weeks living together, the pair hatched a sickening plan. Terrifyingly, in the days leading up to the plan, the pair bought a circular saw, bleach, cement, a drop sheet, a large plastic barrel and some acetone. Trudy identified their victim. Aaron Page was friends with one of Trudy's sons and she decided they would lure him to the flat. They used the excuse of needing Aaron to come and install some games onto their computers. As he obliged, Gemma came up behind him and strangled him with a wire. She then stabbed him 3 times. They buried him in a shallow grave and attempted to cover it with concrete. Aaron was reported missing on the 14th of June after failing to return home. It was on the 20th of June that police were able to track Aaron's last call to Gemma's phone, which led them to investigate her. They searched the property and found Aaron's body along with the knife and the saw. Police even found CCTV evidence from Gemma's own CCTV camera. In 2018, both women were sentenced to life with a minimum term of 28 years.
This daycare worker is why many Americans choose to not send their kids to daycare. Hi, my name is Ethan, and trigger warning, this is a dark case. In June of 2018, a 1-year-old in Jessica Cherry's care allegedly fell from a chair, hit her head, and suffered extensive bruising and skull fracture. Fast forward 2 years later, another 2-year-old was found deceased in Jessica's playpen in her home. Jessica immediately called 911, and the 2-year-old was transported to Children's Hospital of the King's Daughters and was pronounced deceased. The pathologist who performed performed the autopsy on the 2-year-old later declared that she was potentially smothered and that is how she passed away. They also saw that the child had blunt force injuries as well. Jessica was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter in August of 2022, and on March 17th of this year, she was sentenced to 10 years in prison.
Prosecutors will not seek the death penalty for the murders of Kaleo and Roxy Coleman. If you don't know, Matthew Coleman is accused of killing his 2-year-old and 10-month-old because he believed his wife had passed on serpent DNA. He's confessed to shooting their kids with a spearfishing gun 29 times, yet he pleads not guilty. According to prosecutors, on August 7th, the family was just outside of their Santa Barbara home packing for a camping trip. Seemingly out of nowhere, Matthew picked up the kids, put them in the van, and drove off. Immediately, Abby Coleman called 911, but at first she didn't want an officer to come out as she thought they would all be back soon. That following day, on August 8th, Abby changed her mind. She reported her family missing and, with police, used Find My iPhone to track her husband's last known location. With this, it became clear Matthew had driven Kaleo and Roxy into Mexico. FBI at the border was alerted to be on the lookout, but by this point, he was already carrying out his plan. As confirmed by surveillance footage, around 3 a.m. on August 9th, the three were seen leaving a Rosarito hotel. From here, Matthew just started driving. At 3:12, he texted Abby that things have been rough, but he's finally gotten some clarity. Tragically, we know that shortly after that message was sent, the kids were killed on the outskirts of a remote ranch. Matthew attempted to hide their bodies and then disposed of the weapon and bloody clothing in a nearby creek. Now, while the kids were found by 7:30 that morning, back at home, no one knew. When Abby woke up that morning, she got Matthew's message about clarity. She responded with this at 9:24 a.m. and then alerted police that his iPhone was headed back towards the border. Obviously, when Matthew tried to cross back over, the kids weren't with him. In recorded interviews, he discussed wild conspiracy theories, along with how he could communicate with his children. He said 10-month-old Roxy told him Abby was abusing them and that he had to kill them to save the world. So again, today Matthew still pleads not guilty, with the most recent update being that he will not face the death penalty. Court records also reveal that he and Abby shared mutual interest in these theories, but his beliefs reportedly grew stronger. Investigators say that they have and will continue to treat Abby as a victim in the case.
This is a tragic story of how this boxer went from this to this. Back in 2015, 23-year-old Pritchard Collin and Terrell Williams competed at the Eagle Bank Arena in Virginia. At this point, Pritchard had only been pro for 2 years until this fight, which would be the last time he entered the ring, leaving him in a vegetative state. From the very beginning of the fight, Pritchard complained to the referee that Terrell kept hitting him with rabbit punches. And if you don't know what that is, they're punches to the back of the head or neck that are extremely dangerous and can cause brain or spinal cord injury. These punches are illegal, and usually the fighter would be disqualified if it happened in a fight. Pritchard also mentioned to the ringside physician that he felt dizzy, but he can still go on, so the match continued. But on this night, after multiple rounds and blows to the head, when Pritchard went into his dressing room, he began throwing up. He eventually passed out and was rushed to the hospital, where he underwent surgery for internal bleeding in his brain, and then he went into a coma for 221 days. When Pritchard woke up, he was in a vegetative state, and his mother and father have been taking care of him ever since. The blame has not only been put on Terrell for throwing illegal punches, but the referee and the physician who sat ringside were also negligent for failing to take any required steps to either stop the fight or get Pritchard some help. Pritchard's family filed a $50 million lawsuit against the physician, but it's never been settled, and apparently he's not legally responsible for any of this. Pritchard's parents were told by doctors that he would never get better because of the damage that was done, but if you see some progress videos that have been posted online, it's clear that Pritchard has gotten better, and I hope that one day he can be close to what he
Horrific new details have been revealed in the case of Abby Williams and Libby German. If you've been following, you know the girls were enjoying a day off school when they were killed near Delphi's Monon High Bridge Trail. Richard Allen has since been arrested, with his defense now arguing that the way they were found actually suggests a ritualistic sacrifice. On Monday, they filed a 136-page document, including a step-by-step of what Richard would have to do to commit these crimes between 2:13 and 3:30 p.m. I'm going to be brief, but again, a warning that these details are horrific. According to court documents, the crime scene on Valentine's Day was ghoulish, with what appeared to be the letter F painted in blood on a tree. The girls were, quote, treated differently, but both reportedly suffered wounds to their necks. Abby was dressed in Libby's sweatshirt and jeans, with more clothes found in the nearby river. Aside from that, the defense states that the girls were positioned with branches of varying sizes arranged on their bodies. On Abby, there were sticks mimicking antlers, and another placement included 3 branches that resembled an asterisk. So with all of this information and more, the defense is arguing a lot. That no one could have done this alone, that there is overwhelming evidence tying Odinism to the crime scene, and that several officials believed a cult to be behind the murders. They also named 5 suspects who they say were cleared too quickly, including a man whose son was dating Abby at the time. They note that his social media posts contain rooms that actually mimic the crime scene. It is a 136-page document, so there's a lot, but another thing the defense is asking for is a hearing to present evidence to throw out the search warrant at Richard's house. That is where police reportedly found a gun that matched a bullet found at the crime scene. As of today, the prosecution has not responded to any of the defense's claims. As always, if you would like to donate in Abby and Libby's name, go to the Abby and Libby Memorial Park Fund.
This girl killed her mum so that she wouldn't find out she got kicked out of school. On the 3rd of March 2020, police were called to do a welfare check at a property in Ohio. Brenda Powell lived in the house, the 50-year-old mother of Sydney Powell. Brenda had actually been on the phone with Sydney's former school. This was the University of Mount Union. Now, during the telephone call, a staff member heard repeated thuds and screaming, so authorities were alerted. Inside, they found Brenda Powell in a serious condition. She was rushed to hospital but died from her injuries. Brenda had been unaware that her 19-year-old daughter had been kicked out of the school. During her telephone conversation, Brenda was struck in the head and then stabbed nearly 30 times by Sydney. However, when police investigated the murder, Sydney tried to claim that there had been a break-in. She told them that there had been a noise and her mum had instructed her to run away. She said she heard screaming and when she ran back in, her mum was on the floor. Investigators saw through her lies and she eventually changed her story. At her trial, she pled not guilty by reason of insanity. Her defense argued that Sydney was suffering from undiagnosed schizophrenia. They stated that she killed while experiencing a psychotic episode. However, it is rare for people with schizophrenia to act violently. It was concluded that Sydney had been exaggerating her symptoms. She's recently been found guilty and is awaiting sentencing.
This story makes me sick to my stomach. This is 14-year-old Scotty Morris out of Eaton, Indiana. On the night of March 16th, Scotty got into an argument with his parents after they forced him to put on this embarrassing t-shirt, and he ended up leaving the house and running away. He left the house wearing only this t-shirt, some shorts, and tennis shoes. And so a lot of people are very worried that he is being exposed to these freezing temperatures. They have not been able to find a trace of him in 6 days. Naturally, Scotty's parents have been under fire because of this bizarre, humiliating form of punishment. And you just see the pain in his eyes. It makes you wonder what's really going on in that house, why they would take a picture of him in this, like they were going to use it later as ammunition. I don't know. I don't get it. I think it's horrible. But here's what Felicia had to say to her son.
This is Felicia Morris. She is Scotty Morris's mother. We've been working with Felicia for the last 3 days, and she's been very cooperative with our investigation. We had decided that she wanted to talk to Scotty personally, so that's why we're here.
Do I hold on?
No, you're okay. Go ahead.
Scott, I love you, and I want you to come home. And I know that you're mad and confused, and I'm afraid that you're scared of all of this. Everyone is out looking for you, and we're not trying to scare you. You're not in trouble, okay? If you're in a house and they come to you and you don't want to go out because it's the cops, reach out. Me and Dad will come get you, okay? I love you and I just want you to come home. I need you to know that you're safe. Please just call 911. Tell anyone. I need you home. I just need you home, okay? And I love you so much, okay?
Guys, we found a suitcase at the...
Gotta go. I'll do stuff.
Bro. Wait, open it. Open it. It stinks, y'all.
So if you don't remember this story, back in 2020, a young woman and her group of friends were filming a TikTok video while they were using the app Randonautica. Now, if you don't know what Randonautica is, it's an app where you put in some sort of an intention, like scary, and it gives you a set of coordinates to go on some sort of little mini adventure. And on that day, those people had randomly gone out on a Randonautica adventure and had been sent to those coordinates where they discovered suitcases. And inside of those suitcases, shockingly, were 2 sets of human remains. Eventually, those remains were identified as belonging to Jessica Lewis and Austin Wenner. They were 2 locals who lived in the Seattle area and they had gone missing prior to this discovery. After some investigation, it was revealed that these two had gotten themselves involved in some sort of criminal activities, but still the question remained, who had killed them? Well, it was this man, 65-year-old Michael Dudley, a landlord in the Seattle area. As it turns out, he was the landlord for the two victims, and some sort of altercation had occurred on June 9th, 2020. On that day, according to further investigation, Michael Dudley had gotten into an argument with Jessica and Austin. And after this argument, he went upstairs to the bedroom that Austin and Jessica were renting. He shot them both to death, most likely for not paying rent and being involved in this criminal activity that they were bringing into his home. But disturbingly, Michael then took this a step further, and instead of just burying their bodies somewhere, he decided to dismember them. That's right, he then dismembered these two adult human bodies, stuffed them into suitcases, and tried to dispose of them in two different waterways in the Seattle area. Now, Michael was eventually caught and arrested for this crime, and eventually after the trial, he was sentenced to 46 years in prison. And with him being 65 years old already, this is practically a death sentence. I just remember seeing this video when it was first released and it was making its rounds on social media and thinking that can't possibly be true. But in this case, the actual reality of the situation was darker than any sort of fictional situation I could have ever imagined.
Did you know that Gino D'Acampo actually served time in prison? Many people in the UK absolutely love Gino, who is well known for appearing on daytime television. However, many people don't know that he does have a criminal past. This true crime case honestly reads like a bizarre fan fiction. In 1998, way before he ever appeared on ITV's This Morning, Gino was 21 years old. He was an unknown waiter living in North London. He broke into the home of well-known 80s singer Paul Young. He was known for having hits such as Wherever I Lay My Hat. Gino stole Paul's guitar collection, which was reportedly worth around £4,000. He also stole his platinum disc. Police investigating the crime found that Gino had actually unknowingly left his DNA at the crime scene. He dropped a cigarette butt with his DNA on it. They were able to match this DNA to Gino, and he was sentenced to 2 years in prison. Gino actually reached out to Paul personally to apologise to him just prior to entering the I'm a Celebrity jungle back in 2009. Gino stated that he was involved with the wrong people back then and was on the wrong path.
This is Lauren Cook, and she, along with her 3 children, have been missing from Ferrum, Virginia since September 5th. But despite Virginia police saying that Lauren and her 3 children have been missing for over 2 weeks, her husband remains unconcerned and maintains that this isn't the case. 30-year-old Lauren and her 3 kids, 7-year-old Benjamin, 5-year-old Hannah, and 2-year-old Elijah, were last seen in their home in Ferrum, Virginia on September 5th. That day, Lauren missed a scheduled court appearance in Franklin County Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court. A missing persons investigation was initiated after Lauren did not appear for her rescheduled court appearance on September 13th. It's not clear why exactly Lauren was due in court, but police have said that juvenile records are confidential. Lauren's family has not heard from her since September 5th. A news release said, quote, "There has been no reported contact with Lauren since September 5th or 6th when she stated that she was in New York visiting family." This was the last time Lauren's mother spoke to her, and she said that Lauren's bank account hasn't shown any recent activity and her cell phone last pinged on September 7th in Lexington, Virginia. Investigators later confirmed that Lauren and the kids had been in Litchfield, Illinois, but they haven't been able to directly talk to them, so they are still considered missing. Despite concerns from authorities and Lauren's family, her husband and the children's father, Jordan Cook, is not concerned, saying his wife and his children are not missing. Jordan was in attendance at the family's recent rescheduled court appearance on September 20th, but Lauren was not there. But Jordan Cook said, "I have no reason to be concerned about their safety or well-being. I have heard from my wife, and I'm sure she and my children are doing well. We ask that our family's privacy be respected at this time." But Sergeant Megan Houston said that until Lauren and the kids appear in person to a law enforcement officer, they are still regarded as missing. She said Lauren and the 3 children will remain in local and national databases as missing until a law enforcement agency is able to lay eyes on them to ensure that they are okay and not under any duress. She said this is the typical protocol for when someone is entered in as missing. A reported phone call, phone ping, photo, video, audio, etc. is not sufficient to clear the missing persons alert out of the system. According to Lauren's mother, Lauren is also 5 months pregnant. Lauren and her children may be traveling in a 2013 blue Chrysler van with Virginia license plates. Anyone with any information about Lauren or her children should contact the Franklin County Sheriff's Office.
Now y'all, Jalen's family rushed to be by her side at Grady Hospital. They learned that Jalen was shot twice in her face and she was shot in her back and her spine. Now this ended up severing her spine. Now Jalen was also placed on a ventilator because of all of the swelling and made it hard for her to breathe. Now y'all, this 24-year-old who had just had a baby not even 6 weeks ago was in the hospital fighting for her life. Now Jaden could not speak, but she was writing things on this board. And one of the things that she told her parents was, "I want to survive." Jaden also started to recall everything that was going on the day that she got shot. She remembered him saying that she shouldn't have came there and that she was going to die. She recalled zip ties. And she's saying that after she got shot, she just kept fighting because she wanted to live for Josiah. Now, Jalen's mother did learn what actually happened that day. Jalen is saying that when she got there, he had zip ties and he tried to zip tie her. Jalen then tried to make a run for it when she realized that this man is going to try to kill me. Now, as Jalen is running for her life with her baby, she's huddled over her baby. Jamar is chasing her, and that's when he shoots her in her back. So Jalen's still fighting for her life. The baby ends up dropping, and that's when she's trying to crawl to the door. He then stands over her, shooting her 2 times in the face. Now, this is at the point where he thought that Jalen was dead, because after that, that's when he turned the gun on himself. But Jalen was not dead, and she was able to crawl out into the yard where a neighbor saw her. Y'all, this girl literally got shot in her face, her back, and she was still able to crawl out and help herself and her son. Now, although Jalen has a long road of recovery ahead of her, she is expected to survive. Now, y'all, it is so important that Jalen's story gets heard because it might be another young lady out there that's in her situation. Y'all, this man was very possessive, very abusive, always checking her location, always just doing things to see where she was. But never in a million years did they think that he would try to kill her. And not only that, you guys have to think about, she was holding this baby when all of this took place. So not only was he trying to kill her, he could have killed his own child as well. Now, there is not a lot of justice that could be done because Jamar did end up killing himself. But Jalen and her family, they want to get this story out there because maybe it can touch somebody and maybe it could save a life. As of right now, Jalen's family's main priority is her recovery and the raising of Josiah. Now, there is a GoFundMe that you guys can donate, or if you just share it, that is fine, for Jalen and her son Josiah and for her recovery. And they are also having a basketball fundraiser on September 30th from 10 to 2. Now, this will take place in Griffin, Georgia, and it is taking place at the First Assembly God Church at the gym. Jalen is a beautiful mother. She's a survivor, and y'all, she deserves all the love and peace in the world. My heart goes out to her huge family, because through all of this, they have stepped up and they are taking care of Josiah. Not only that, they are also taking care of Jalen. Jalen is in a wheelchair now. She would need all the help that she can get. You guys, please make sure you blow this up. Share this. Maybe somebody will see this video and they'll leave a bad situation that they're in. Or maybe somebody's going through a similar situation that they're on the fence about, and this video could help them. Justice for Jalen, and y'all make sure you blow this one up.